But something that's very cool about Rhonda, in addition to being a wildlife rehabilitator, she actually once owned horses and rode barrels in local hometown rodeos. So this is a woman of many skills.
So am I the only person that you gave that little tidbit of information?
No, every single person has had their fun fact, but yours was definitely the most interesting.
So first I'm going to add, well, first off, you won't have any trouble hearing me because I just talk loud. But so how many of you have seen the Dawn commercials? Everybody? Yeah, so you all think that you just grab an oil bird and wash it and throw it back out to the wild. I can tell you that a lot of people do believe that. That is not true, and I'll try to go through this as quickly as possible. But so I had a discussion with Gina a little bit earlier. It's like, why do I do what I do? I'm a wildlife rehabilitator, but I'm an oiled wildlife responder as well. So I do that because one, it's the right thing to do, and two, the public demands it. So, you know, I could probably come up with some other reasons, but those I think are, it really comes down to that. The public demands it, and you can't just leave an oiled animal out in the wild because it is not going to survive. So I'm going to try and keep this Louisiana specific, but since December 12th, I've had a response in South Louisiana, Arkansas, and yes, Minnesota during the polar vortex. So, and yes, those ducks did survive. They have a long recovery before they can go back out into the freeze, but they have survived thus far. And really, those of us who rehabilitate oiled animals know that it really is species dependent. Some just don't survive, and some, I hate to say that it's difficult to kill a snapping turtle, but it really is. So I'm going to go from how I get activated all the way through how I demobilize and go back home. I work with a lot of the people in this room, Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries, NOAA, LOSCO, U.S. Fish and Wildlife. I know a lot of the people that are in this room today, and I work with them quite often. So it could be one of them that gives me a call and says, hey, we have a problem. But then I say, I need to talk to the responsible party, because so I took my hobby. You want to know how I got here? I took my hobby, which is wildlife rehabilitation, and I turned it into the way I make a living. And I really don't ever feel like I go to work. I sometimes feel quite guilty because my hobby becomes my job. So most days I really don't feel like I work because I really do like what I do. So I could be activated by any number of the people here on this list, but it comes down to I have to talk to the responsible party because they're the ones that have to pay me for coming in. Now, if there were a spill and there were no responsible party and someone called me, I would say, you know what, I'm still coming in because we'll figure the rest out later, because I cannot leave an animal with product on it. And I'm going to buzz through these, and I know you want to leave questions to the end. So mark down your questions because I don't read slides to folks. So if you can just read through them. These are just a lot of questions that I would ask if I was activated. Where am I going? It says, are response trailers on the way? And I know most of you don't know those acronyms up there. CGA is Clean Gulf Associates. MSRC is Marine Spill Response Corporation. All of these guys have oiled wildlife response trailers, and I would want to know if those trailers are on the way. because I don't just show up. I need to know where I'm going. I need to know where the oil is going. I know where the oil started, but what's the trajectory? I need to know where I might want to set up a response trailer. And I can't just have the trailer. I need a big warehouse, and you'll see some pictures a little bit later. I tell a lot of stories with pictures. It's just an easier way to get my point across. So that's why I'm going to buzz through all of this, all these words. Have animals already been observed, or the wildlife trustees already engaged? And for, I don't know who's on the phone, so I don't know if you know what a trustee is. But that would be like U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, or if it's here in Louisiana, LDWF. I need to know if those folks have already been notified, and if they haven't, then I will notify them. There is one person that I always call before I come into Louisiana. That's Dr. LaCour. I mean, yeah, I've already spoken to Laura or somebody in the office with you guys, with John. But Dr. LaCour is my go-to person. I do not cross the Sabine River coming from Texas before I talk to Dr. LaCour and tell him that I'm coming into Louisiana. But again, just a lot of questions that I'll be asking when I get that first phone call. And now this goes the other way. What can you expect from me as a trustee, as a responsible party? What am I going to be giving to you? A lot of paperwork, a lot of paperwork. Because if I don't, you will be calling me for the paperwork. I tell my responders that once the spill is over, it all comes down to what's left, the paperwork. That's what's going to tell the story in the end. Long time ago, and I've been doing this about 20 years, and I apologize to those of you in the room who have seen this presentation before. I did change it a bit, but it comes down to wildlife response is wildlife response. Yes, occasionally we do change the type of detergent that we use. In fact, not everybody's using Dawn anymore. No, there are a few other things that we use now. So don't tell Procter & Gamble, please. But there are a lot of things that you will expect from me. And all this paperwork really comes down to, I really need an extra person now, because I need to take care of animals or I need to take care of paperwork. I cannot do both. So now the responsible party asks me, well, why do you need all these people? I need all these people because I've got to get the documentation right, and I want to keep the animals alive. And let's see, so Gina is out there, and I know that you talk a lot about NRDA. So a lot of my documentation in the end is also used for NRDA. And long ago, there was a saying, there is a very solid line between response and NRDA. I did a presentation for a group called Spill Control Association of America back about, I don't know, 5 years ago. And it had NRDA in the title, right alongside response. And that was because I was attempting to explain that that line really wasn't that solid, that it was fuzzy, because everything I gather, be it the GPS coordinates from where I collected that animal to where I released that animal, it's all going to be used later on in the NRDA case. So now we'll go through each piece of what I do. And I may not be the person doing the capture, but I may be a part of it. I may have a person in the field assisting LDWF capture animals. So I do have personnel that can do that. I have some that don't particularly care to do it. And I'm getting a little bit older. And, you know, as much as I do love it, I'm not as fast as I used to be. And if you'll have a look here at Lexi in the picture, there's a reason that you want younger, more agile people. If you look at everything that she has on herself, she looks like a pack mule. And it was about 100 degrees that day. And we come back to the documentation, and what you see here is a U.S. Fish and Wildlife chain of custody form. From the moment an animal is collected until it's released, that chain of custody form stays with that animal and eventually becomes a part of the whole package in the end. So collection, then we get them back to, well, then we transport them, we get them back to a rehabilitation center. There are some pictures here. Someone mentioned earlier Hurricane Isaac. This actually was the rehabilitation center that was set up during post-Hurricane Isaac, and it was in Belchase, Louisiana. It was a very massive warehouse that the Coast Guard set up for us, and we didn't know what to expect because there were spills everywhere. Well, it turns out we didn't really need that big of a warehouse, but personally, I like to start large and then whittle down. I really don't like having to have animals come into a small rehab center and then move them all. So this was really a really nice response area for us. Rehabilitation, the trailer that you see there is my trailer. I purchased it from the Texas General Land Office. It's a 40-foot response trailer that has everything inside it that I need to keep me going for about 3 days for a small to medium-sized spill. A little further, more detail of what's inside the trailer. In the cabinets, I have all the medical supplies that I could need. Heat lamps, I have kennels, I have, you name it, and I can tell you I have it because I've done this for so long, I know what I'm going to need. And then warehouses. I have warehouses kind of strategically across the Gulf of Mexico. Unfortunately, when I have to go to the interior, it's a little bit more challenging. I will tell you, every time I drive from Texas to Louisiana, I'm looking at warehouses going, yep, that one would work. So I'm looking for a nice big open warehouse like you see the one down in the bottom left. The interior of that is on the top. I went into that Osro's office and said, hey, I need your whole warehouse. So he went and he got some Connex boxes, moved all his stuff out, and it became my rehab center. To the right is actually the inside of a Connex box that we converted into a rehab center. So I can turn just about anything into a wildlife rehabilitation center. Again, post-Hurricane Isaac, the beauty of that one, if you look to the far left, that was actually my apartment. I stayed at the rehab center. Well, it was post-hurricane. Finding a place to live was a little difficult. So the Osro went out and bought everything I needed to convert that little place up there into an apartment. Woke up in the morning and I could look out and look at the birds and see how everything was going. Could also spy on all the rehabilitators. No, they didn't like it. More pictures of that particular response. I have a very specific way I set up a rehabilitation center, and anybody that works with me knows exactly how I like it. So we get them there, and then we go through the intake process. So the animal comes in the door, and then all of these things happen. Uh-oh, I don't know what I did. Oh, okay. So intake, and then we have to stabilize them. No, we do not bring them through the door and put them right into a dawn bath. Sometimes it's 2 or 3 weeks before they ever get the oil washed off of them. It depends on the animal. Then eventually we get to the wash. So you see different tubs here, the little one big for a little bird, and then we could use a big galvanized tub, or we can go back here to where my trailer is. And bottom left, the wash sinks are inside the trailer. Okay. So we've washed them, then we have to observe them, make sure they're healthy enough to be released. If they're not healthy enough to be released, they may go to a zoo, aquarium, long-term rehab. I don't particularly like to hang around for weeks on end, so I do look for local rehabilitators to help me out for long-term rehab. Then we recondition them. That pin down on the bottom right was during post-Hurricane Isaac, and the Coast Guard paid to have that 50-foot flight cage built so that we could allow the pelicans to fly, because if they can't fly, we can't release them. And then ultimately release. I know on the right-hand side there, you cannot see that little toad, can you? Yes, thank you to Todd Baker who brought me that toad in. Yeah, let's see if I can find it. Where is that? I don't know. Where is it? This?
Nope, just below that red.
Here.
Yeah.
Okay. It's right there. And I really know you can't see the tiny little one that came and jumped right on top of it while we were releasing it. But there is a teeny tiny one that said, "Oh, I have a new friend." And I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this to play. This is actually a, what is it?
Control space bar if you're having
Really?
trouble. That's what
I tried.
It may be an older version of PowerPoint. Sometimes that is on our laptops, and unfortunately.
Oh, there you go. Let's go. QuickTime not available. All right, I'm sorry.
It's sad because the loon actually makes this very mournful cry.
We can try to load this onto our web page after the fact.
Okay.
Recording of it,
Yeah.
if that's all right.
Yeah, that'll be fine. And yes, I think I finished on time.
All right.